I live with my family, but haven't said a word to my dad in around 4 years now. I've posted this story to quite a few Reddit forums, now as a way of accepting the situation and learning to speak about it. I would prefer not to use my name, so please just call me Alice for confidentiality. Hello, I am Alice, and I'm currently 17 years old and in my final year of sixth form, 12th grade. I haven't really spoken about this to many people as it's such a personal topic for me, and I almost always end up not being able to hold myself together while telling the story. Please be respectful. Me and my dad never fully got along. We were very similar people in some ways, but very different in others. Whenever he would attempt to parent me after I'd done something wrong or something that he thinks is something I've done wrong or something that he thinks is something I've done wrong, it was never done in a way that was non-abusive. He very rarely hit me, but it was the norm for him to throw things around and break belongings. My belongings at times. He has physically thrown me around before a lot, dunked my head in the sink that was full with water, kicked me down the stairs. He's quite a violent man. He wasn't only physically abusive, but would also scream terrible, hurtful things to me that are not things you should hear from your own father. He constantly would defend his parenting tactic and would almost take pride in the way he parents. The word abusive was not a word he would use, and neither would I, as this was all I'd known at the time. I didn't dislike him, though. When we got along very well. We had the same sense of humor, similar tastes in music, and I was something of a daddy's girl during the good times. He was very sensitive to noise, specifically high-pitched ones. When me and my sister would play, we would often chase each other around screaming. This set him off very often, and he would act like a mad man. As a result of this, my voice has become quite quiet in general, and if I say something too loud by mistake, I get very anxious and almost afraid, even if he isn't around. One night, when I was around 13, my family and I were watching the movie. This movie is one of my favorites, so I was quite excited to watch it. As the movie started, it was difficult not to notice that my dad just kept commenting on things that were happening in the movie and nobody was responding particularly, but it was very irritating and distracting. I asked him to be quiet because I couldn't focus on the movie whatsoever, which he flat out just said no to. This confrontation led to a small argument that had raised voices from both of our parts. I can't remember how it ended, but we carried on watching the movie. He started very clearly talking more and more, which I can only assume is his attempt to annoy me for even daring to ask him to be quiet. I let out a loud sigh of annoyance and frustration because it was just ruining the movie for me, which to him was apparently the worst possible thing to do because he didn't think twice before throwing his beer bottle at the side of my head and screaming at me. I had no response because I was just so in shock at what had just happened. He clearly didn't like this, so got out of his chair and quickly ran at me. I ran out of the room and he ran after me until I went down the stairs before stopping and screaming more things at me. Not sure what. I think my mother shouted at him to stop, which is why he didn't attack me. When I got to my room, I started hysterically crying and was absolutely terrified he would hear me cry. He has a thing about it crying and it being useless and basically didn't let us cry or he would go insane. I went back up the stairs, but not all the way to the living room, just sat on one of the top steps. I eavesdropped on the conversation my mom was having with my dad about what had just happened. I specifically remember him saying, "I don't even like her. I don't like my daughter," which broke me there and then and is something that will never leave me. Around an hour after the whole situation happened, my mom messaged me with a huge paragraph which basically said that he wouldn't be responsible for me anymore and that she alone would parent me. I had no clue what this actually meant at the time. The day after, my dad and I didn't say a word to each other, which is common to happen after we had had arguments. I didn't think anything of this and just tried to avoid him for that day. Weeks had gone by and those weeks turned into months, and the silent treatment hadn't ended. I remember talking to my mom about this. She would tell me that us not talking to each other was the best option, and that it would be better than us arguing all of the time. Seemed reasonable enough. It was enjoyable for a while, but there would be, and still is, times where I have to go into a room that he is in or walk past him in the hallways of my house, and it is such a strange thing. We just completely ignore each other, almost like we never even existed. I have two younger siblings, I'll call them Isabel and Archie, who still have a relationship with my dad, a good one at that. I hate seeing them get along. He does get angry at them at times, mostly Isabel, just as he got angry at me in the past, but significantly less than he got mad at me, which hurts quite a bit because it just goes to show that he was fully capable of not picking on me multiple times a day. We went through this silent treatment for the whole of lockdown, and still are. My dad is a person. He is very witty and quite charming to people that are not in his family. It frustrates me how good he is with people because he is widely viewed as a nice person in our local community and our family. It doesn't take long for people that visit our family to notice that my dad and I never talk to each other or mention each other. Of course, they don't say anything about it, but I know that they know. The family members that we see the most are my grandma and grandpa, mother's side. My mom told me to try and get along with him and act like we still have a good relationship in front of him because my grandma worries a lot about things like this to the point where she doesn't sleep. Of course, I don't want for her to worry about me, but it just would feel awful pretending to have a relationship with him and then going home and it just being gone. I couldn't bring myself to lie and pretend everything is okay. My dad could, though. He tried to be friendly around them without directly talking to me, but indirectly mentioning me or joking and responding to stuff. I said to them, due to me not joking back or even responding to him, they caught on. My granddad has spoken to about the situation about 3 or 4 times before, always with the same stuff, but he's so nice. I couldn't imagine him being horrible. Can't you just make up? What did he do to deserve the silent treatment? I always just said the same stuff to avoid conflict. We just don't see eye to eye and would argue a lot otherwise. I view myself as not having a father. I mean, when people ask, I say I do, but I do not actually have one. I can't really say I have a complete family, really. It really hurts me watching other people, specifically girls, having a good relationship with their fathers. It always subtly upsets me when my friends' dads call them up to ask if they're okay, or just call them at all. It's easy to look past this whole situation and suck it up for a while, but once every 2 weeks or so, I end up getting really emotional about it. My mom still stays with this man after seeing how he treated me, and it hurts me seeing that he can still look at him and think, yes, this is the man I love and want to stay with when he is so far off of the man she deserves. Because I have had no relationship with my dad due to this whole silent treatment, I've grown much closer to my mother. I don't like that. She somehow finds a way to subtly imply that I am being dramatic whenever I get upset and talk to her about the situation. I feel like she's been completely blinded by love. It also hurts that the things me and my dad used to bond over, humor, music, etc., he is now bonding over those very things with my younger sister. She's 4 years younger than me. My dad even had a nickname for me, Pock. He called me this because I had chicken pox as a baby. He's now calling Isabel Pock, which doesn't even make sense because she hasn't had chicken pox. Seems like he is just trying to find new ways to have a dig at me indirectly. I have overheard from other rooms him saying all types of petty things about me, blaming me for our whole 3-4 year silent treatment situation and whatnot. After my DSEs, these pretty big exams you take at the end of 10th grade, I did very well on them and got a place in a pretty good 6th form. My dad sent me a message, which was shocking and caught me off guard, saying he was proud that I got these results and that he would stop this silent treatment if I wanted to. I was so shocked by this message, it gave me a huge emotional reaction while I was in school and I had to go to the bathroom and cry, and I couldn't stop. I had to ask to go home in the end because I couldn't go to lessons. I didn't respond to this message, and I still haven't. It's been about 1 year since the message. I can't let him into my life again, even though I live with him, and he technically is in my life. I just can't bring myself to talking to him again. I don't view him as a family member. He is a horrible person.